You are about to witness a collapse that will redefine an entire generation. And what if I told you that what's coming isn't just a crisis, but a true upheaval in the financial market? Something many are ignoring while making plans for the future. Patrick Bet-David has a clear warning. It's no longer a question of if it will happen, but when it will happen. We're talking about a financial crisis that could sweep away the savings of those who aren't prepared. And the scariest part? It goes beyond the headlines, directly affecting your wallet, your finances, your home. The problem is, while some have their eyes wide open, most are still lost in illusions about easy money and endless growth. The truth, however, is much harsher, and those who prepare now will be ready to turn the tables. Want to understand how to protect yourself and come out stronger? We're about to show you exactly that. Economic bubble and phantom debt. Have you ever had the feeling that, despite everything seeming stable, something is lurking around the corner? That's exactly the current economic scenario. Behind the optimistic headlines and statistics indicating job stability, there's a bubble growing by the day. Many Americans are working multiple jobs, trying to stay afloat, but the truth is they are sinking into something much more dangerous. Phantom debt. These are those by now, pay later purchases that seem harmless but don't show up on credit records. It's like a shadow that grows and suddenly swallows you whole. Think about how often we've seen this happen. Someone starts using these services for small luxuries, a new phone, maybe an appliance. At first, it seems like a perfect solution, but these debts pile up silently. And before you know it, there's this snowball of financial obligations that no one was counting on. The financial market doesn't forgive missteps, and the feeling of being in a bottomless pit only worsens as time goes by. The root of the problem lies in how easily these invisible debts are created. People get carried away by a false sense of control. Who hasn't thought, I'll pay that later? But later comes quickly, often accompanied by high interest and an inability to pay. And the scariest part is that all this is off the credit agency's radar, meaning that, in the system's eyes, you still appear to be in control. But who's really in control? The question you need to ask yourself now is, how much of this phantom debt is affecting you? Because the issue isn't if it will catch up with you, but when. And when that happens, it won't politely knock on your door. It will barge in. And when the bubble bursts, will you be ready to handle the impact on the financial market? Or will you stand by, helpless, as everything around you collapses? The situation is scary, but the good news is there's still time to prepare. And understanding what's happening now connects directly to what comes next. The uncontrolled use of credit cards and the depletion of savings. Credit cards and savings depletion. Now, imagine the impact of seeing your credit card debt multiply. The numbers don't lie. From 2021 until now, U.S. credit card debt has jumped from $330 billion to $1.1 trillion. We're talking about trillions, and this mountain of money keeps growing. And at the same time, what happened to family savings? They're evaporating. The current pace is $70 billion per month draining from savings accounts. Think of it as a bathtub with the drain wide open. No matter how much you try to fill it, the water keeps flowing out. People are spending without thinking about the future, and the result is predictable. When a credit card becomes the solution for everything, from medical bills to dining out, debt grows and savings vanish. This creates a vicious cycle. The more you spend on credit, the less you have to save. And without a reserve, the next crisis could catch you unprepared. What many don't realize is that the real power lies in learning to use credit responsibly. Warren Buffett always talks about the importance of living below your means. It's not about stopping living or enjoying life, but about living strategically. Maybe it's time to pause and think about how you can save. A simple example would be to reassess where you're spending. Maybe it's time to cut that unnecessary expense and redirect the money to an emergency fund. With savings drained, the use of credit cards has become a quick fix. But when interest rates rise, as they are now, this cycle becomes even harder to break. What starts as a small problem can turn into a financial snowball. And if you're not careful, this accumulation of debt can drag you down. Speaking of sinking, this leads us to one of the most devastating problems: underwater mortgages. Underwater mortgages. Did you know that many homeowners are facing a terrifying reality? Their homes are now worth less than the debt they still owe to the bank. This is what we call being underwater on a mortgage. Imagine paying for something that, on paper, is no longer worth what you're shelling out. That's the situation for many Americans, especially in states like Kentucky and West Virginia, where the housing crisis has hit hard. When mortgage rates rise, the debt seems to grow faster than the home's value. What started as a dream of homeownership has now turned into a nightmare. And the worst part is that for many, the only way out is to sell. But in today's market, with prices dropping and demand shrinking, selling means taking a significant financial loss. So, what do? Keep paying for a house that isn't worth the price, or try to exit with the least possible loss? Some people try to renegotiate their mortgages with the banks, looking for better terms. But that's not always possible. And what's left is a feeling of being trapped in a debt that never seems to end. For others, refinancing mortgages before the pandemic seemed like a good idea, with lower interest rates. But now, those rates have soared, and many find themselves paying far more than they ever anticipated. And the impact goes beyond families. The real estate sector feels this pressure. And when real estate collapses, the financial market suffers along with it. The 2008 housing crisis was an example of this. Are we heading towards something similar? But while the housing crisis unfolds, post-COVID consumer behavior is accelerating this financial instability. Post-COVID consumer behavior. Consumer behavior after the pandemic reveals a lot about our relationship with money. After months of lockdowns, with few opportunities to spend, many people amassed significant savings. But as soon as restrictions were lifted, a spending spree began. It was as if there was a need to make up for lost time, which led many to spend without thinking about tomorrow. But tomorrow arrived, and for many, it brought a harsh reality. The money was gone, and the debts were piling up. The problem is, by spending impulsively, many didn't realize that their savings were evaporating quickly. Imagine someone who used their saved money to buy a new car or renovate their home. At the time, it seemed like a great idea. But now, with high-interest mortgages and credit card bills coming due, many are back to living paycheck to paycheck, just like before the pandemic. The difference is that now, the financial burden is even heavier. This post-COVID spending pattern created a dangerous bubble. The economy seemed to be recovering, but in reality, many were just burning through their savings without a clear long-term plan. The excessive use of credit, combined with a lack of financial planning, has left many in a vulnerable position. And what few realize is that this vulnerability is directly tied to their ability to survive the next crash in the financial market. Think about how interest rates have risen since then. What once seemed manageable, like mortgages or loans, has now become a heavy burden. Many consumers, who once believed they had a financial cushion, now find themselves in a tough situation, struggling to pay basic bills and avoid bankruptcy. This unsustainable consumption bubble is a clear reflection of how poor planning can turn a temporary crisis into a long-term problem. The lesson here is clear. Spending without a plan can lead to dangerous paths. The solution lies in changing financial behavior now, before things get worse. And what happens when these debts and depleted savings force people into emergency sales? This leads us to the next topic: the housing bubble that's about to burst. Emergency sales and the housing bubble. When savings run out and debts pile up, many people are forced to sell what they have to survive. This includes their homes, cars, and any other assets that can be turned into cash. But what happens when everyone is trying to sell at the same time? Prices plummet. That's the scenario we're seeing now in the housing market. A wave of emergency sales is saturating the market, causing house prices to drop even further. Imagine someone who, facing a financial crisis, is forced to sell their home to pay off debts. However, with the market flooded with desperate sellers, the value of their home plummets. Instead of getting a fair price, this person finds themselves having to accept an offer far below what they expected. The result? They lose money and still come out with unresolved debts. This kind of rush sale only weakens the economy as a whole. This phenomenon is creating a housing bubble. The more people try to sell their homes in a saturated market, the more prices fall. And this doesn't just affect those selling. The entire housing market suffers from this devaluation, affecting everyone from big investors to small homeowners. The problem is that once the bubble bursts, it doesn't just impact the housing sector, but also the entire financial market, creating a domino effect. If you find yourself in this situation or know someone who is, the key is to seek alternatives before putting the property on the market. In some cases, it might be worth considering renting or trying to renegotiate the debts. The housing market is cyclical, and selling at the peak of a crisis could mean an irreparable loss. Planning a more strategic exit can make the difference between losing everything and coming out with some gains. But this housing crisis is directly tied to a deeper problem: financial illiteracy. And this is where financial illiteracy, which is worsening the situation for many Americans, comes into play. Financial illiteracy and financial dysmorphia. A lack of financial education is one of the biggest challenges we face today. The truth is, many people simply don't know how to manage money. They spend what they don't have, accumulate debts they can't repay, and live under the illusion that everything is under control. This phenomenon is what we call financial dysmorphia, a distortion of reality where people believe they're in a better financial situation than they actually are. It's like looking in the mirror and seeing a distorted image without realizing the real impact of your financial choices. This lack of financial literacy creates a dangerous cycle. People end up living paycheck to paycheck without savings, without investments, and without a plan for the future. They use credit cards as an extension of their salary, without realizing they're paying far more than the original purchase price. The result? Debts that grow out of control and an increasing reliance on loans and easy credit. The problem is that this financial dysmorphia doesn't just affect individuals, but the entire economy. When a large portion of the population is spending beyond their means, the impact is felt across the financial market. Debts pile up, interest rates rise, and the bubble grows. Eventually, this bubble bursts, and those who weren't prepared are the hardest hit. But how do you break out of this cycle? The answer lies in financial education. Books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki or Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker can help shift your mindset about money and build a solid financial foundation. The key is understanding that money isn't just for spending, but also for investing and building wealth over time. And this leads us to the final point: personal responsibility in finance. Because in the end, it's you who has the power to change your financial situation. Personal finance and responsibility. Taking responsibility for your finances is the first step toward financial freedom. In a world where so many depend on external factors, whether it's the government and inheritance, or even a stroke of luck, those who truly thrive are the ones who understand that real change comes from within. And when it comes to finances, that responsibility starts with recognizing that control is in your hands, not in the circumstances around you. This means making informed decisions, saving consistently, and avoiding reckless spending, especially in times of uncertainty. Think of it like driving your car on a road full of twists and obstacles. You can't just wait for the road to straighten out and be freshly paved to move forward. You need to steer, adjust your speed, and make smart decisions to avoid the potholes. In the financial world, this means knowing exactly where your money is going, adjusting your habits, and making choices that ensure a more stable future. A practical example is creating an emergency fund. Many talk about it, but few actually do it. Instead of spending everything you earn, start by saving a small percentage each month. This gives you a cushion to face unexpected events without having to rely on credit or loans. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors in the world, always emphasized the importance of living below your means. And it's not just about being frugal, but about being strategic. Now, It's important to remember that financial responsibility isn't just about saving, but also about investing wisely. Many people are afraid of the financial market, but it offers great opportunities for those who educate themselves and learn to navigate it. Books like The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham are great reads for anyone wanting to start understanding how to invest consciously and safely. The market may be unpredictable, but those who have knowledge and preparation can take advantage of the swings. In the end, the secret to a healthy financial life is in your hands. There's no point in waiting for a salary increase or relying on external help. Real transformation comes when you decide to take control of your money and make choices that lead you to a more prosperous future. And that decision is yours. Now, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Conclusion: now that you have all this information in your hands, the question remains, what are you going to do with it? Will you stay the same, waiting for the financial cross to catch you by surprise? Or will you take control of your financial life and prepare for what's coming? The truth is, the financial market is unforgiving, and only those who are prepared will come out stronger. You've already taken the first step by seeking out this knowledge. But real transformation happens when you apply everything you've learned. So, what's stopping you from starting now? How about taking the first step to building your emergency fund or learning more about investments? The future is in your hands and the responsibility is yours. And remember, the market doesn't wait for anyone. If you don't do anything, you're letting others make decisions for you. Ask yourself, am I willing to leave my financial life in the hands of chance? If you want to keep learning and strengthening yourself, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you'll find powerful insights that will help you transform your relationship with money and ensure a prosperous future. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Be the protagonist of your financial story.